Hello and welcome back to Creative Pet Keeping. Today we are going to be following the journey of the lives of little tiny baby Herotilapia multispinosa, also known as the Rainbow Cichlids. These are Central American cichlids, although these guys were captive bred, and they are really fun to keep and observe because they exhibit very interesting parental behaviors, which are quite common with a variety of cichlid species. When it is time to breed, two fish of opposite genders will pair up and they will remain a pair during the duration of raising the fry. So at the moment you see the female who is laying the eggs. She is extending a tube-like organ. As she deposits the eggs onto the rock, the eggs are actually attached to the rock so they don't get swept away, because these fish do originate from rivers where the flow would sweep the eggs away, and then the male will fertilize the eggs. So all the eggs are fertilized externally. While she is doing this, the male is actually protecting her and the nesting area. These cichlids are quite protective and can get aggressive during the spawning process towards other fish, but normally this species is actually quite peaceful towards other fish when they are not breeding. I was really excited to get this footage because it is quite difficult to be in the right place at the right time to watch these eggs exit out of this tube, and you can actually see that here mostly when they spawn, and here's some sped up footage further away. So this is actually the same pair in a different location when they spawned during the different time, and you can actually see them taking turns with fertilizing the eggs, laying the eggs, but also chasing away other fish, and usually they do this quite far. The first time they did this, they did it right in a rock right in front of the tank, which was so awesome. I got so lucky because that really gave me the opportunity to get a close look at this spawning behavior. It's very interesting to observe the dynamic between the spawning fish as well as other fish in the tank, because fish do release chemicals which do get other fish excited. So as you can see, there's a big male coming out over here. He wants to get in on the action, and they pair successfully, chase him away back into his little cave so they can continue their spawning process. Once the eggs are laid and fertilized, the fry will start to develop it's hard to explain. They sort of externally develop out of the egg while they're still attached to the egg itself, feeding on the egg yolk, so they don't necessarily hatch like you would see in a chicken, for example. The first stage is known as the larva stage, also known as the wiggler stage because they wiggle so much. This is where I remove the fry and put them in a breeding container, which is an external container that is still attached to the main tank, and the water from the main tank flows around. This protects this fry at a very vulnerable time from getting eaten by other fish, but also lets us observe this very peculiar and weird stage. During this stage, the fry are developing their muscles by constantly wiggling around. Their heart is external, you can actually see it, it's the red part, and their eyes begin to develop. The next day, the eyes started to darken up, so they looked a little less creepy, but you can still see the eyeball through the head because they were partially transparent. Another thing you can notice is that some of the fry are just kind of chilling on the ground, but others are attached. So they actually have a sticky part on their head. It's a substance, I have no idea where it comes from or how it happens, but it allows them to stick to surfaces. And some of them, while they're exercising, they're kind of freaking out like that one. They just wiggle, and it keeps them safe in one spot. When I was observing some of the fish that were left with their parents, the adult cichlids, when they grab the babies in their mouth, they can actually spit them out and attach them to things like rocks. Here you can see the heart again. You can actually see it beating, which I thought was really cool and exciting to look at. You can also start to see the veins in the fins and different parts of the body. So you can see just the organs are developing, all these different parts are developing, while at the same time the fish are still feeding on the egg yolk. So the yellow part is still the egg yolk that is attached to the fish, and they will continue to feed on this for a while, and this still indicates that they are in the larva stage. Now you will see some little organisms and critters all around. Those are just little microorganisms that are just hanging out. They're pretty harmless, and this was a really cool shot. So we actually filmed the babies underneath the breeding box, which kind of really lets you get a closer look at the anatomy of the fish. You can see the heart beating, the blood being pumped, the organs starting to develop, and of course they get stuck to everything. They get stuck to the debris that floats around, to the plants that are there. And sometimes when they're exercising, they go crazy. Like this little guy went nuts for a pretty long time until he got tired. But this is very important because it really develops all the important muscles that will later allow them to swim. And oh, we got really close up here, so you can kind of see all the little blood vessels if you look very closely, which was super cool. The eyes are also starting to become more fully developed. So this is taken during the span of a couple days. Different fish species have different growth rates, but there are a lot of similarities. So this will kind of give you an idea of what your fish might have went through as it developed as a baby. Out and take a close look at the mouths too. At this point, they're starting to open their mouths and they have little tiny fins. At the end of the larva stage, the fry will begin to free swim. What this means is they can actually start to swim around and explore their habitat a little bit and start to learn how to eat. At this stage, they do still have a little bit of their egg yolk available to them to live off of, but as you can see, here are some microworms that we added, and they're very excited about it. They don't really understand that this is food yet. Some of them have tried it out. They catch on sooner than later, and the funny part is because in this weird transitional stage, the top of their head is still sticky, the microworms actually stuck to their heads. So if you look very closely, they have little wiggly worms on the top of their heads. But these little guys are not only starting to swim around and look around, but they are also starting to color up and really start to show little patterns. Now these patterns are designed to help them blend in so they hopefully don't get eaten, and at this stage they do try to stay as close as possible to each other because there is safety in numbers. What I did notice is at this stage they are also starting to move their eyes a little bit. They can't move them too well, but as they are getting better at looking around, besides moving their head, they can start to move their eyes, and in general they're just figuring out how to fish. As you can see over here, they're starting to swim up, they swim down. They do try to hug surfaces, so they try to stay close to the glass or to the plants that are in the breeding container. This provides them with safety. So usually you won't see fry swimming around in the open unless their parents would be around. Here is an example of some free swimming fry of the same age with the same parents. Now these guys were actually allowed to grow up in the actual tank while the other ones were in the breeding container, and as you can see, not only are they in a very big group, that was a big spawn, but they are a little more brave because they are protected by their parents. Here is another cool angle of the fry trying to figure out how to eat the microworms. This was taken from underneath the breeding container. It's kind of cool to have this angle because you get to look at the anatomy of the fry, but also just kind of get a different glimpse at their life. So they got a little better at eating. Here their tummies are nice and big and orange again, and it's for a different reason. We were feeding them a lot of BBS, also known as baby brine shrimp, and when their tummies fill up with the brine shrimp, they become nice, round, and orange in color. The fry, as you can see, are getting more and more efficient at eating every day. They are learning. That one in the back was pooping, so you get to see fry poops. They're eating, they're looking around, and they are just becoming very efficient at doing fish things. So during these early stages, fry are very intelligent and they do learn quickly for little tiny critters with a developing brain. While the fry in the breeding container can develop without their parents just fine, I do notice that fry do benefit from having their parents around because they do learn a lot of behaviors from the adult fish. Although with adult fish there's always risk of either getting accidentally eaten by the parents, which happens not very often, rarely, but also the risk of getting eaten by other fish. So sometimes the breeding container is a safer place to be. Now, the bodies of these little guys are starting to develop more horizontally. So as you can see, their body is starting to fill in. They're becoming less and less transparent. And slowly but surely, they are starting to look a little more like their parents. So fry in the very early stages, especially in the larva stages, look very weird, but over time they look more and more like little tiny fish, little tiny versions of their parents, and they do develop quite quickly. Now, the time span of which you would consider fish fry does vary. For these guys, I think at this stage they are still fry. They got really big here. This is actually the most current clip that was taken today, which was the last day of editing on March 6, 2019. So these guys at this point are ready to move into a larger grow out container, and they're starting to get these beautiful patterns, and they really look like tiny little rainbows. Aren't they cute? Watching these little fish develop was a really amazing experience, and I hope that you enjoyed taking a closer look into the secret life of baby fish. If you enjoyed this, be sure to share this video with your friends and subscribe for more videos, and do check out some of the other videos that I have. Oh, and that was a really big yawn. I do have the whole playlist, a series of following the growth of bettas. So if that's something you might want to check out, go ahead, and I'll see you in the next video.